Welcome to Liner Notes. My name is David Bixler. Heads up that this interview was recorded remotely. It might not be of the same quality as if it were recorded in the studio. Happy 2023. In Bad Hombre, drummer and composer Antonio Sanchez takes ownership of the pejorative remark made by the former president about Mexicans coming to the United States, and hits back with a stunning musical counterpunch that features Dave Matthews, Trent Reznor, Pat Metheny, and many others. In this episode of Liner Notes, Antonio shares his feelings about the former president's remarks and provides the listener with an insight into the process behind this innovative project. Antonio Sanchez, welcome to Liner Notes. Good morning. Thank you for making the time to talk with us today, and here to talk about your new recording, Shift Bad Hombre, Volume 2, which came out at the end of last summer on Warner Music. Welcome, and let's start with Bad Hombre. From what I understand, this is an alter ego of sorts that you have created, and this was in response to the former president and something he said. So let's open up with that and how this came to be.
Yeah, well, I had been making records in the same way for a long time, which, I would just sit at the piano and then start writing either, a melody or a bass line or something, start coming up with a tune, developing it and then playing it with the band, record it. So it was very unorthodox, an orthodox way of doing things, just very normal. And then in 2015, I moved to this house where I am right now. For the first time, I had a studio. I bought some gear. I had to do, right after Birdman, they hired me to do a couple of soundtracks. So then I had to buy the equipment, learn how to use it. I did the soundtracks, and then shortly after that, the former president started his candidacy, and he started with that infamous speech from Trump Tower saying that all this no good Mexicans were coming through the border and they were not sending their best people, and that it became a thing, the bad hombres that were infecting the United States with their crime. So around then, it started really bothering me. Obviously, how I was a Mexican, I am a Mexican living in this country, and all of a sudden having one of the, who would be the future president, talking that way about us and getting elected, not in spite of what he said, but kind of because of what he said. It resonated with a lot of people. And that was a rude awakening for me. And I was very frustrated. I was angry. And I had the studio, so I was just kind of playing, releasing some steam, recording what I was doing. And then slowly I started editing those improvisations, adding a bunch of electronics on top of that. And it was just like a therapy for me. Just to create something by myself in the solitude of my studio without anybody looking over my shoulder. And it was very liberating. And then I grabbed the name Bad Hombre, just kind of as trying to own this term that it had become something pejorative for me. It had become something hurtful and harmful. So I just wanted to grab the term and then kind of make it my own and then do something worthwhile with it. And then that kind of became my alter ego, where I could just be in my studio and just create without really thinking too much about what it is that I'm doing. It was more like a stream of consciousness, just guiding myself by sounds and by textures instead of really trying to figure out, okay, what chord is this and this goes with what melody note. It was just a very different way of creating music for me, and it was very liberating, and it yielded some very different music that I had been writing up to this moment.
Mm-hmm. I know of, you as a jazz drummer, your work with Pat Metheny. In fact, I heard you last summer. I went to check. I hadn't seen or heard Dave Benny in a while at New Blue. That thing which was really killing. A record of yours that I was fond of with Chris Potter and David Sanchez, Migration. So, obviously, as a Mexican, the theme of migration coming here has been part of your story. How has that changed, you alluded to it a little bit, but with Trump and, I don't know when that record was from, like it was a decade ago. Where are you on this journey, of migration, of like ownership of, you and your culture and being in America, to, where you are now, especially with this recording?
Well, it's always an interesting process, to be. Now I'm an American. I have my passport now, and it's always a strange feeling because I'm not from here, but I've been here more time than I've been in Mexico now. So it's always an interesting thing to negotiate where I'm from. How do I feel here? I obviously New York is a very interesting place because there's people from all over the world, and then so it doesn't make you feel like an outsider. But I don't know. I feel like I'm at a good place creatively because of I'm kind of understanding more who I am. I think maybe it's just because I'm older. I'm kind of more mature and I know better, I think, what I want to do without really caring too much about what people are thinking or they think I should do. So I don't know. It's just always an interesting process to keep doing the inner research as an artist. Like, what else is there that I could do that I haven't done? I could keep doing I could have kept on doing records the way I was doing them and with the people that I was doing them and playing the usual places. But I kind of started getting a little tired of the loop. I tire easily. I get bored easily. It's not that I was bored of playing with the most amazing musicians on the planet. Not at all. But I feel like there's just so much more out there to research as an artist that I hadn't. And this new way of making music, of having all the tools here at home, and then just really have my imagination be the only boundary. It's been incredibly refreshing as an artist to be able to do that.
Mhm. I did not check out the first volume of this, but the volume two is a product of the pandemic and a very interesting process. And you speak about it in the liner notes, but why don't you tell us about how this came about? And there's 12 different artists. Some of them I knew, some of them I didn't know, but your as they say, your Rolodex is pretty impressive. Like great amount of talent, and just jump in there.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the cool thing about this record is that every artist on the record I kind of got in touch with personally, and I had some kind of connection with. Um, Dave Matthews, for example, which, I had absolutely nothing to do with Dave Matthews up until the day where my friend Bella Fleck called me to do a gig opening for Dave Matthews in Mexico, where he does a residency every year in the Cancun area. So we went over there and we opened the concert for him. And then we sat in with him because he was just playing duo with Tim Reynolds. And, I met him there. And then when the time came to do the record, I was like, man, it would be so cool to have a Dave Matthews song. So I reached out to Bella and asked him, do you think they would be into doing something like this? And then I didn't hear from Bella, but I got a text from a strange number like 20 minutes later that just said, hey, it's Dave, what do you need? So
Nice.
I was like, oh my God, this is crazy that people are open to do this with me, because I'm the least famous person in the whole record, which is funny. And I'm a jazz drummer who, of course, a lot of people knew me from the Birdman soundtrack. That helped just to have a reference point if people didn't know what I did before that. And because most artists loved Birdman, then that opened doors for collaboration. Trent Reznor, same thing. Trent Reznor, I met him at the Golden Globes when I was nominated for Birdman. He was also nominated. and he loved the movie. So that it was easier then to establish some kind of communication with this artist. But basically, my first Bad Hombre was just an exploration of what I could do by myself, having the drums be the main instrument, and then having everything revolve around the drums, but not with a bunch of drum solos. I didn't want it to be for you to hear the album and just be like, oh, obviously it's a drummer's record, because there's drum solos all over the place. And it's very drum centric, but I didn't want it to be that overt about, oh, check out how I can play, how good I am. I feel like I have proved myself enough, with my body of work, that I just don't feel like I have the need to do that. So with this new record, I wanted to do something where I would be also having the drums be the main driving force. But while I was thinking of what to do, I went to Mexico, and I went to a concert of my really good friend Silvana Estrada, who was on the record, and she did this song named El Agua y la Miel, which is a very cryptic and haunting song about the disappearance of women in Mexico. And I went to that gig, and I saw her doing that song, and I was like, wow, it would be amazing to just grab that song, which she did, just her voice and her cuatro guitar, and grab that, and then start adding layers of drums and synths and basses. And I just started hearing a lot of things in my head. And after the concert, I went up to her and I asked her if she would record the song for me and give me the permission to just mess around with it, just to mess around. I didn't tell her this is going to be my next record or anything like that. I just wanted to experiment with it. And what I liked it was that her song was very linear. It was just very steady, and I kind of created all these peaks and valleys and made it really epic in some parts. And she loved what I did. Thankfully. So then that just kind of was the spark to do the whole record like that, because I was like, man, it's beautiful to have this raw material and have the permission from the artists to just kind of reimagine the whole thing. So then second person I asked was Trent Reznor. And same thing, I got his voice and a few cents from Atticus Ross, his writing partner, and then I started editing and adding things, and my pitch to the artist would be, it could be anything new, it could be something old, it could be a sketch, it doesn't matter. I can work with anything. I just need your voice and the permission to reimagine this, having the voice and the drums being the two main ingredients. And I do all the production. I did pretty much all of the mixing. So it was a very personal project in a way, but with the material of other artists that are great storytellers, great songwriters. And I knew that all this material that I was going to be given, because all these artists have depth, it would have things to do with things that are important to me, like human rights and social justice and women's rights, addiction, mental health. I think all these things are very important to talk about, and these artists usually have depth in all the things they do. So it was a producer's dream to have all this incredible material and then have the permission to reimagine it my own way.
Does this start happening during the pandemic?
Right before the pandemic.
Okay.
And then when the pandemic hit, I was already in the thick of it. So then I had plenty of time to really work on it and live with it for a while. Because a project like this, it's really hard to tell when you're finished, because you could keep working on it for years. If I had 10 years, I would have probably kept on working on it.
Especially during the pandemic, I imagine.
Exactly. We had time. I had time, and then people like Dave Matthews or Trent Reznor also had time, which was pretty remarkable. So I think without the pandemic, maybe this record would have been, I'm sure it would have been a completely different thing.
Was there a back and forth? Did you send various versions? Hey, look, this is what I'm doing. What do you think? Or did you wrap it up and say, this is it?
That was the interesting part, that even though it's a collaborative effort, I did not go back and check with them periodically. I would just completely try to finish what I was doing, put my vision entirely into the song, pretty much mix it, and then send it once it was all said and done. So it was risky, because it was like if somebody was giving me their baby, and then I did all this plastic surgery on the baby and then returned the baby, and hopefully they would like the results, because the song is very personal, but I really tried really hard to do justice to the song, to keep the integrity of the song intact. But I also wanted to completely surprise the artists with my version. So it was risky, but luckily all the artists signed off on it because they liked it.
It was interesting. I listened before knowing anything about the recording. I listened to it straight through. And then after having an understanding of what it was about, El Agua y la Miel, I started to, all of a sudden I heard, oh, this is just this woman singing, playing her cuatro. And then, you put all this stuff to it. It was kind of like a regression, which was really kind of an interesting discovery for me as a listener to check out, what this was.
Thank you.
Well, one of my favorite ones was Power. And this is Rodrigo y Gabriela, who I don't know. These friends of yours?
Gabriela, they're huge, man. I mean, they
Yeah.
play.
It was killing. I just love that, man. Yeah.
They play this, Bonnaroo, and they play Lollapalooza.
Okay.
And it's just this two, this guy and this woman that play incredible guitar, and they can, play these big places because they have a huge presence, and they have a very specific thing that they do. And it would be interesting for people to hear what they gave me and then what it ended up being,
Yeah.
because that's one of the best examples of how I expanded on what I was given, and harmonically, rhythmically, and sonically, of course, because all I had was their two guitars. So what I loved about doing this experiment is just creating like something really big out of something that was fairly small when it was given to me, because I only asked for the voice and any other element that they would want to give me, and then just try to create worlds around that, basically.
Yeah. It might be interesting in the future. I don't know if it was 10, 15 years ago where was it Let It Be Naked? That Beatles album that they
Mhm.
put out before the producer got a hold of it. I don't know if you heard any of that. And
No, I didn't
yeah,
know.
it was pretty stark, and the
Wow.
contrast between what they had
Yeah,
laid down and what they ended up with.
yeah,
Um,
that's fascinating, that process, because it can really, uh, having the raw material is just obviously incredibly inspiring to me. But then I also wanted to inspire the artists that gave it to me with the results, and yeah, it happened, luckily.
yeah. So this recording is bookended with spoken word, and it's your grandfather. And I looked up online, 97 years old. That's
Yeah,
incredible, man.
and I'm still doing it.
Yeah.
He actually, I just did a concert with Pat Metheny in Mexico, and he couldn't come because he had two shows that day.
That's killing. I mean, it's so interesting. Like, I put it on, and it was kind of like I was seeing like an old black and white Mexican film with kind of like Carnival Barker or something. Like it was
Yeah, and if you saw him, you would understand. He's one of the most. He's a legend in Mexico. I mean, he's gotten the Presidential Medal of Honor in Mexico, basically because he's the oldest working actor right now. And I wanted to have him on the record. And he used to do these shows of telling tales about the Mexican Revolution with a mariachi band, and it was great. I saw it many, many times, and he has a way of telling stories about how he has a great voice. So I wrote some verses for him about the record, and I imagine like a central square in Mexico with the kids playing and the church going with the bells, and all of a sudden you hear his voice inviting people to come in and listening to the record, and to listen to the secrets that Bad Hombre has prepared for the audience. So it was really heartwarming to hear his voice, and then all of a sudden, boom, the first thing you hear is Dave Matthews' voice right after that. So I love the juxtaposition of things that had absolutely nothing to do with one another.
hmm with the Dave Matthews tune. I don't know if I'm pronouncing this correctly. AE.
Drop the devil to the floor. I will drop the devil to his knees. I'm gonna drop the devil to his knees. God, he has many names, but the devil has many more. And with the love that my mother gave me, I'm gonna drop the devil to the floor. I said, drop the devil to his knees. I say, drop the
EHE. Oh, EHE 2.0. I watched the video last night. And did you do the video? Did you bring someone in to do it? Maybe talk about that, because it seems to me it was very fast paced, but I'm sure there's a lot of symbolism in that. And
Right.
was this your vision, or were you collaborating with another artist?
It was a collaboration with this artist. His name, he calls himself Nacho. And at the end of the video, you see his
I did
little
see
thing,
that, yeah.
natural vision.
Yeah.
And we talked a little bit about what the song could mean and how, in what direction we could go. And it's one of the main parts of the song is bring the devil to his knees.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not exactly sure in which context Dave was really meaning what he was trying to say, but the way we worked with it was like all the evil, that we're faced with on a daily basis, ranging from addiction to the phone, to loneliness, to violence, everything. How the way to kind of get around that is just by going back to basics, being a person, talking to people, love, all those things that are just basically kind of the only solution to all of our problems that we're faced with nowadays. And he found incredible footage, and he did an amazing work of putting it all together.
Yeah, it's pretty killing, man. Last thing before I go, like when I saw the record, I saw all these artists, and often when an artist such as yourself makes a project, creates a project, you're gonna go out and present this. So my first thought is like, okay, man, how do you get like Dave Matthews to come like do your gig or whatever? But I did see that you have the band, Bad Hombre, and how do you like distill this diverse repertoire into it? The picture looked like it was 4 people, maybe 5 people, and it looks like your wife is part of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's been a really fun and difficult process to try to figure out how to bring this on the stage, because obviously the amount of artists, that was never going to happen to have all these artists live. So Tana Alexa, who is I think one of the most versatile singers out there right now, because she has her jazz thing that she's incredibly good at, but then she can also sing like Aretha Franklin, or she's rapping in Spanish when she does Ana Tijoux song. She's very, very versatile. She speaks enough Spanish that she can manage both all the Spanish speaking artists and on the record, and also men, women, Trent Reznor, Dave Matthews. So what I wanted to do is just have the essence of the record, obviously. So we play the songs, but then we open it up for improvisation to happen. And Big Yuki is this incredible keyboard player from Japan who's a master at soundscapes. And then Lex Sadler, who's from Australia, plays keyboard bass, electric bass, and he also manipulates the tracks, because we're also using tracks from the record to basically make everything thicker and bigger. So, for example, you have Tana singing Dave Matthews' song, but you hear Dave Matthews' voice doing backup vocals for Tana.
Okay.
That are the voices from the record. So I wanted to have things that were undeniably, sonically speaking, from the album, and then completely change it up while we're doing it live. So it's been really, really fun. And honestly, the response we have gotten from the people that have heard the show live so far is that, they really love how different each song is. It's very unpredictable what you're going to hear next, because the material all comes from different artists. But we draw a straight line through the material with our instrumentation. And now that Tana sings all the songs, she has really made them their own. So I think live, it has become a really fun show to watch.
I'm sure. I look forward to checking it out. Antonio, thank you so much for your time, and congrats on a great project, man.
Thank you, David. I appreciate the invitation.
Liner Notes is grateful for the support of Van Doren Reeds and Mouthpieces. Be sure and check out the Van Doren Advisory Studio in New York City for all your sound sculpting needs. Liner Notes is grateful for the support of Arlen's Good Beer in Bowling Green, Ohio. Sound by Marco Mendoza. The theme music is No FOMO, Mofo by yours truly. Produced by David Bixler. Be sure and subscribe to Liner Notes wherever you find your podcasts. If you like what you hear, I ask that you consider supporting Liner Notes financially. You can do this by going to the Liner Notes tab at davidbixler.com. Thank you for your consideration.